So I've been watching some comments online and they've been very goofy. A lot of the comments were in regards to a Soulframe video I put up where I was essentially one-shotting all of the bosses, okay? Guess what, Nimrod? Watch this. They need to nerf that ability. And it was very interesting. Because currently, if you don't know, Soulframe is in its like pre-alpha state where that game's gonna still need a ton of work and it's gonna take like a solid half year to be like playably up to date, I would say. So a lot of people were talking about how that one attack was OP. And at the end of like my little video clip, I straight up was like, okay, that needs to be nerfed since I one-shot a boss with an ability, okay? That shouldn't be a thing that happens in video games until you're at like the end game stage and the single player game gives you like a gimme weapon, right? That's the only time that sort of stuff generally should happen, is when you're done the game and the game's like, good job, you did everything, have a godly weapon that trivializes the rest of the game. But the thing is, in Soulframe, from level 1, you get a weapon like arm magic ability where it pushes back the enemies and it straight up one-shots them, right? So that really got me thinking. And it worked on like half of the bosses as well, which was goofy as hell. And that really got me thinking, like, how are people doing these days, man? Because there were so many comments on that video, and a lot of them were like, PVE does not need nerfs. You don't need nerfs in a PVE game. No. PVE games need no nerfs at all, which just confused the hell out of me because I'm like, have these people never played a single player game? Do they know what balancing is? So are gamers like, okay? Are people actually going crazy right now? Because it's actually wild how asinine that sort of like thought process is. Imagine if you didn't have balance in PvE video games. Imagine if every weapon in Warframe already one-shot. Like, Warframe and Soulframe are gonna be the two perfect examples. Because right now, Warframe itself is the easiest game I've ever played, right? Once you collect things, once you get like a small idea of how Warframes work and you have some mods, Warframe's like the easiest game possible. This is by no means a difficult game. And I'm really hoping that when Warframe releases Soulframe, it isn't as much of a cakewalk as Warframe, because I'm sorry to say, in the, I would say, past 3 years that I've been playing Warframe, the general game itself has had zero actual difficulty to it. Like, every update in Warframe has either new weapons, new Warframes, new areas, new tile sets, but Warframe has not been a difficult game, probably for anyone who's been actively playing the game or keeping up with it a little bit. And as much as I love Warframe, the without a doubt worst part about it is the fact that it's just so easy. Like, it's a fun horde shooter, but the game kind of loses its drive, loses its difficulty and passion to play it. And I see that like the only thing a lot of people end up doing is just making builds and running the game until level 9999, whether that be through like Void Cascade, which seems to be the current meta, or Lua Apollo, or one of the other Zariman missions, who knows, right? But it seems like the only difficulty right now people are finding in a game like Warframe is playing the game straight for like 2 hours and then they get so bored that they drop out. Like, that is the current difficulty cycle, is just make yourself invincible, kill high-level enemies, and just until you get bored, jump out. So, I don't know. I just don't know what's going on, man. PvE games quite obviously do need balancing, right? Just taking a look at the core argument of just PvE games don't need balancing. I can't actually ground finisher, it's lying to me. Yeah, it's just crazy. Games need balancing for a large many of reasons, right? Soulframe itself, as well as Warframe, they're going to be, if not they already are, in Warframe's case, live service games. So they are going to be actively developed live service games where everyone plays them update to update, not everyone, but people come in, people come out, etc., right? it's gonna be a live service game the same as Warframe. And if Soulframe already starts off, before it even releases, having the same problems as Warframe, I just don't see it ever becoming as popular as Warframe, or ever really popping off to the kind of state that Warframe could. Because Warframe is like a horde looter shooter where once you get enough of the game actually played, you're a god. You're an invincible god. And right now Soulframe is a melee and magic RPG where you're actually balanced in the game. You're not an invincible god. You have limits to the things you can do, but they really need to fix up balancing so you're not able to one-shot it. But it seems that like a lot of people just straight up don't understand balancing in video games, and they actually think that single-player games, PVE-based games, need zero balancing. Which is, again, it's always going to be a crazy thought, because like, what do you think games are created around? That's right, baby, balancing and gameplay. So it's like people are already starting off their arguments saying games don't need balance, but that's kind of how games are made, okay? If you go play a game like Call of Duty, anything like that, if you're gonna do the campaign, usually you don't want to one-shot every single enemy and take 0 damage, right? You want there to be difficulty, you want there to be a reason to play, you want there to be like that push of, oh, I'm getting better, or oh, I'm learning things. And when a game has 0 difficulty to it, that shit just doesn't exist. Like, there is no drive half the time. Which is, again, Warframe's current problem, and like any MMO live service's current problem is, how do you get people playing forever, and how do you make that an enjoyable experience? Believe it or not, most games don't take the Warframe route of make everything you do so strong that you are pretty much a demigod, right? Most games don't have that, and Warframe's one of the few games where the balancing actually works for the game being incredibly OP. But Warframe still needs to balance everything, right? Warframe is a very gimmicky game depending on where you're looking. You have Warframes that are invincible, you have Warframes that can just one-shot everything, Warframes that have map-wide nukes, you have the Helminth, you have about 10 different systems to level up and increase your Warframe's abilities and power one way or another. So Warframe is a game where they still have to balance it, and they still have to make sure things aren't incredibly OP. If we still had Dante non-line of sight nuking the entire map, that would just trivialize every single other Warframe. And to be fair, Dante kind of already does trivialize every other Warframe in the game, and that's without them giving him every possible damage boost. That's with Dante already getting a multitude of nerfs that, like, let's be real, they don't really matter. Like, line of sight, oh no. But it still begs the question, like, how important is balance in PvE games nowadays, you know? Because Warframe's had invincible Warframes such as Revenant for the longest of time as well. But then they get debuffs in other areas via just having their rest of their kit either less OP or less all-around amazing. And then you have Dante, right? So, hey, balancing in PvE games is still definitely necessary, okay? You can never not balance video games. It's very important. It's just like, what level is the game set up to be balanced around? Right now, Soulframe is balanced all over the place, right? Like, there's no cash shop in it yet. There's just fighting and killing enemies. And your magic seems incredibly OP, whereas your melee seems pretty weak overall. So I'm assuming they want to balance it in regards to most melee-focused melee magic RPGs, right? They want magic to be strong, but they don't want it to be so strong that it's the only thing that you use. And they want melee to be fun and usably good, but they don't want it to be so insane that you're like one-shotting, assassinating every single enemy out there. So that's like kind of the current state of PvE balancing. You have a bunch of goobers thinking that PvE games don't need balancing, not realizing that whenever they're not one-shotting something, whenever their abilities and their weapons have stat points, that is balancing. Like, that is all balanced in the game. It's out there, you just don't realize because you're not an active development part of the game. You're just a random person playing the game. So I think the whole rhetoric of PvE games don't need balance just straight up is one of those internet statements that people like to make every single time they talk about a game's balance, not realizing not balancing a game would still be balancing a game, but just like shit, right? If we gave everything insane levels of damage, that would still be balancing. That would just be balancing it around you being a god, right? So, no. People are really goofy. People are insane. Games need balance, but it just depends what sort of balance you're going for. Are you going for more insane action? Do you want longer combat, so more combos? Like, what sort of combat are you going for? You have Devil May Cry, Stellar Blade levels of melee action combat with abilities, right? You could go for something like that. Or you have Warframe levels of melee where you just hold a key, kill everything in front of you, bada bing, bada boom, that's balance, baby. Or you could have something a lot calmer, like a traditional old melee RPG. I've been playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey lately, and that game is purely balanced as general RPGs would, right? Enemies have health, higher level, enemies do more damage, higher level gear is more armor and more DPS, and that's it. Higher level, good, lower level, bad, level up enough that you become strong. Yeah, it makes sense, but I'm really, really curious what the balance sort of end game of Soulframe is going to be. I imagine they want to balance the enemies around their levels a little bit because the level of enemies do matter, the same as Warframe, but they don't want you probably to be so incredibly OP like you are in Warframe that you can trivialize half of the content once you get one sort of setup or build or thing you like going, right? Because right now in Warframe, I have the issue of I don't give a shit about anything in Warframe. The weapons are all the same. All of the incarnans are the same. They're just a strong version of another weapon, right? Kuva weapons, tenant weapons, all that shit's just kind of the same. It's strong, but stronger. It's like, can you one-shot enemies? Yes, but can you one-shot them faster? I don't know. So balancing can get weird. It's just kind of one of those things where you need to figure it out when you release a game. So Soulframe is going to have to definitely figure that shit out. And Warframe's already figured out its balance around being incredibly OP and letting people run infinite level 9999 maps or do really long Duviri runs, right? Warframe's balancing is unbalanced. So I'm just hoping Soulframe doesn't do the same balancing, you know? Like, I want Soulframe to be a proper game that we can play. It's balanced well. It has some difficulty to it. I don't want to have to, like, make up these stupid challenges to make the game difficult. I don't want to have to be like, okay, level 9999 run, but only without these OP Warframes, only without these OP Incarnans, you know? I don't want to have to make up some BS rules to make a game fun. I just want the game to be fun. And Warframe does a good job of being fun in like the mid to early and even like the start of late game. But once it does get to the issue where there is zero difficulty in the slightest, then I would say it kind of trivializes the whole update cycle of new loot. And Warframe's been hitting that cycle for years now, for me at least, and I imagine for other people. I don't care about Prime Warframes anymore. I don't care about new Prime weapons. Incarnate weapons, just like, I don't give a shit because all of my weapons are already so OP and they one-shot everything. And I already have like 100+ random weapons I could possibly use. Even with Incarnans, I have like 20 Incarnans built. So yeah, balancing in PvE games, man. PvE games definitely need balance. They need balance for many reasons, whether that be in-game microtransaction balancing, whether that be the game needs to be a fun game type of balancing. I don't know. But what I do know is Soulframe needs to be properly balanced so that you're not just a demigod like Warframe. It should be more of, yeah, like a Souls-like or a general melee RPG where you build up, you have to actually do some combat. You don't just hold a key and face roll everything, right? So I have high hopes for Soulframe. I think it'll do well, and it's currently pretty fun, but they just have to obviously work out a ton of those bugs. They have to create more content, and then they have to decide how is their game gonna fully be balanced and monetized in the first year. Because right now, again, the game has zero monetization, so they can't really balance things around the monetization yet because, you know, it's just not there. So when the game actually releases, we're gonna have to see how good or how bad is the monetization? Is it balanced well? Or did they do the Warframe thing where they make like a bunch of really low priced, very easy to obtain noob traps? Because if you don't know, Warframe sells basic resources for platinum at the worst possible rate. It's like 20 platinum for a couple Orokin cells or like 5 Orokin cells. Never buy that shit, right? So yeah, we're just gonna have to wait and see how Soulframe ends up balancing its game. Whether that be good, whether that be bad, I have high hopes. They're doing pretty good so far. So yeah, balancing in PvE games, it's very necessary. If you don't think so, you've never played a game and ever thought about actually playing a game. You're just like mindlessly consuming and playing a game, probably not realizing that everything you're doing has been balanced already, and you're kind of like fighting made up ghosts that don't exist because, you know, generally people who say games don't need balancing, they're playing a very balanced game so that their fun is curated and that they aren't one-shotting everything. When you don't have balanced games, that's just essentially playing like GTA Skyrim modded so that you're a god, which is fun. It just loses its appeal very fast because once you're a god and you have no difficulty, you're just kind of existing, you know? You're just kind of existing. So yeah. Either way, let me know what you think about balance in PvE games and just balance in general. Warframe needs it, Soulframe needs it. As much as people cry and complain, games need balancing or else people just wouldn't play the game. Either way, let me know what you think. Sub, like, use Epic Games creator code Pupsker. Thank you.